Hello everybody, it's George from Ireland. Well, welcome back to my channel. And this video is how Angela Rayner's home building program is foredoomed. Mrs. Rayner, she is the Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and indeed the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. So she's never been a government minister, like most of the cabinet. They've only been in opposition. She is easily the stupidest member of the Labour cabinet. Now, some of the Labour cabinet ministers have got very impressive academic backgrounds, and Keir Starmer is not least among them. You know, his first class law degree from the University of Leeds, doing a what was it? Not an LLB. What's the next one up? A BCL at Oxford University. An outstanding career as a barrister, head of public prosecutions, all the rest of it. I realised there are other intelligences besides academic intelligence. There's entrepreneurship and musical ability, although that's kind of academic and so on. But Angela Rayner doesn't seem to have any of them. She's ascended to high office without ever really achieving anything. Was she an excellent care home worker? I don't know. So it's seemingly astonishing that someone like her should be put in charge of something so enormous. Remember, Labour is the one fixated with qualifications, with certificates, with bits of paper, with ticking boxes. And how come they wouldn't put her in charge of a playgroup? Because she doesn't have a degree, but they would put her in charge of the nuclear button. Because if Starmer drops dead, until Labour can have a proper leadership election, she is prime minister. If Starmer, is sedated for a surgery or something, it's her finger on the nuclear button. But anyway, it's possibly because she's such a dimwit. They've given her this hospital pass of this impossible to achieve project. They overpromised, and they're definitely going to under-deliver. Now, Labour was rather circumspect in their manifesto. They thought the Tories had done their work for them, which is largely true, as in the Conservative Party was such a shower, they were going to be booted out. The government was going to lose the last election rather than the opposition win it. Labour would win by default, and that was mostly correct. So therefore, they didn't want to be accused of promising the earth and actually not producing what they promised. But here they have overreached themselves. So she's going to build 1.5 million homes over the course of this parliament. Now, methinks that is in England only, because some things are devolved, some things are not. But inflation is up to 3%. I know, not that bad. It was 10% a couple of years ago, but that's obviously making it more expensive to hire people, everything, materials more expensive, and people are less able to afford these new homes. So the construction sector is slowing. So material and labor costs are higher than when they wrote these plans. So the increase in various taxes, the increase in national insurance contributions by employers are going to make it more expensive to hire people. There's a severe skills shortage. And another thing, we don't need to send armies of youngsters to university to do mostly Mickey Mouse degrees when there are yawning gaps in the labor market for skills that need to be provided. We're not providing them. In any organization, if you're in charge of development and training, you would do some sort of needs assessment. What needs do we need to fill? We need more people with whatever competences, and therefore we train them to do that, rather than say, well, let's train loads of people to be accountants. We only need one a year, but we'll train 50 people. Okay, so we need 10 engineers, but we'll train none. And that's a bit like education policy in the United Kingdom. Okay, so there's that big problem, and she's been warned. Kemi Badenoch told her this is just not going to happen. Be good if it does happen. Very people would be against more affordable homes. Okay, us greedy homeowners would like to see the prices going up and up. And then Angela Rayner, she's missing a more obvious solution. There are loads of available homes, empty homes, particularly in northeast England, former mining villages in County Durham in particular. Look up on Zoopla, buying 3-bedroom houses, not flats, houses with gardens for like £20,000. Some of them don't need any work done on them. Some of them do need a lot of work on them, but it's just ridiculously cheap. So property in some regions would be like 20 times cheaper than in London. So instead of building more houses, why not move people? And the people the government can move are the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, obviously not all the bases, some of them, to fill those empty homes. Expanding them is urgently needed for defense reasons anyway. And another thing, asylum seekers, housing them there, building more prisons there. The prison officers could live there. The house could be tied to the job. You don't have to sell it to them. You could rent it to them at a peppercorn rent, and that would get the economy going in the area. Civil servants could be based there, and even say, fine, you could work from home, but you have to live here, and so forth. I mean, Liverpool City Council used to sell homes to people for £1, so long as they promised to live there. Regenerated certain streets which had been abandoned. which have become sink estates. Anyway, so yeah, construction activity has been going down over the last year. Now, half of that's been under the Labour government. So mortgage rates are very high. So there's a falling demand from first-time buyers. That's not going to incentivize house builders to build more. So interest rates need to go down. It looks like they're not happening. And okay, the Bank of England is independent. It's Labour granted independence on the third day of Tony Blair's administration. Obviously, Labour could take that back. But it doesn't look like there's going to be interest rate cut anytime soon. So mortgage is not very available. There are all sorts of economic headwinds. So this is why it's not going to happen. We could liberalize legislation to allow people to redevelop buildings, to repurpose disused shop units, because more and more shop units are going out of bust. The high street is being killed off because people are buying online. Pubs are going bust at a frightening rate. You turn those into housing units. So we don't need to be concreting over the green belt. And so she's not listening to these easy solutions. Major opposition. Oh, okay. Conservative voters are older than average, are more prosperous than average, are more rural than average. The sort of people who are least likely to need more housing are going to lose out from it because it will devalue the homes that they usually own. Labour voters are disproportionately younger, more urban, sometimes less wealthy, and so they're the sort of people who really want these new homes. But even the Conservative Party recognises you've got to have new homes for economic reasons, and young people have been forced out of things. And why would anybody under 30 vote Conservative when it got so much worse than Conservative Watch? I mean, it's been getting worse for about 40 years, not too bad in the late 80s, in the 90s. From the millennium, it started to get horrific. So yeah, homes in real terms are something like 12 times more expensive than they were in the 60s. 12 times. That's when there was net emigration. There's now net immigration. That's another factor that's not talked about. Immigration is making it worse. Immigrants aren't bad people. Vast majority are not bad people, but it's obvious the more people you have, the more homes you're going to need. And the thing is, many of the builders are immigrants. So some of them are actually helping solve the problem, and that they're sort of creating, not in a malicious way creating, but yeah. So there are pros and cons to immigration, and all these people economically inactive, perfectly healthy people who are supposedly sick, stressed, got anxiety, who could be building these homes. But anyway, she said she's going to strip powers from local councils and just railroad this through, simplify the planning process, some of which is good actually. But even if local councils don't like it tough, their wings are clipped. But Labour might be punished at the local elections. Anyway, we've yet to see her plan even beginning to come to fruition. You think a few things would have been approved, they would start constructing things, and there will be serious progress by the end of the parliament. 1.5 million homes by the end of this parliament. I mean, assume it was last the full term, to say like July 2029. But even if it does, people say it's going to be 1 million homes at most. 500,000 is a more realistic estimate. So anyway, governments don't build homes, the private sector does, and the private sector is not liking it at all. The other thing is laws of supply and demand. There's a bit of a perverse incentive not to build too many because you want the prices as high as possible. And she's not gone for the easy, obvious solutions. The idea of new towns, the low-hanging fruit has been picked. You've got to have the services there. They've got to connect to roads and railways, obviously schools and hospitals, people who want to live there. They look at these post-war plans of the Medway towns or Milton Keynes or majorly expanding existing towns like Peterborough, but it's just not so viable these days. So yeah, it's going to be a disaster for Labour. But will they fess up to this? Probably not. There's a bit of a sunk cost fallacy. Full steam ahead, even if you know you're going into the iceberg. Well, that's it. But Angela Rayner is just probably too cognitively limited to realize this is happening. Now, what they give this to her as her baby precisely because she's so thick. She doesn't realize that. Does Starmer want her to fail? Because there are other people in the Labour Party who hate her, and they realize Starmer's not going to be there forever. You know, I say another 4 years, probably at the outside. And she is quite a big beast. She's got name recognition. Some people like her because she's working class. I mean, she's got really no achievements to her name. The fact that she's supposedly grew up poor. Okay, that's not a reason to make her a good prime minister or a bad one. So some people would like to see her humiliated. And Rachel really blotted a copybook. Things not being that badly for Yvette Cooper. Okay, illegal immigration increasing, but Labour actually likes that. But the rest of the country doesn't. I mean, David Lammy not making too much of a fool of himself. Anyway, thank you for watching my channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon. Then in PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Toodaloo.